All right, folks, we have an absolutely great show planned for you. And I got to tell you right now, we're going to do something very unique. And I know that there are a lot of questions that continue to be asked about what's happening in Israel. And there's a lot of reasons why those questions continue to be asked, right? We've done a lot of things to provide clarity for you as into what's going on. And I think that perhaps one of the best way to provide clarity as into what's happening there and what's really taking place and developing an understanding of the real story is to allow you to hear the perspectives of other people communicating and identify where the erroneous areas are and actually where the strong points are. And my initial reaction to hearing Chuck Schumer's speech was very, very negative. I was very upset by a lot of what he said. And of course, I'm still very upset by a lot of what he said. But as I listened to the speech more and more, I realized there are a ton of things that I can do with this speech to help you better understand what's really going on in Israel and what the truth is and what the truth isn't. So we're going to go through this speech. I am going to provide commentary as he speaks on some things because I want to make you very aware of some of the tactics he's using, some of the things he's saying. I'm going to attempt to show you where he is being very willful in his intent to try to manipulate you, and where I actually believe he's being very sincere. There are also some other places where I think he's making very, very intelligent and astute observations. And there's other areas where I think he's making just absolutely nefarious statements that are designed to divide and actually destroy the progress that's being made, not completely realizing what the full implications of those things are. So sit tight. We're going to go over all of this. If we have time, what I will do is I will also play another few videos for you. For sure, I'm going to play one other video for you. And that video is going to relate to one of the leaders of Hamas who actually will open up your eyes as into what's really happening and what their thoughts are. And it will help you better understand what the general mindset is of the Palestinian population as well as the Israeli population. So we're going to go over that. I'll do some translating for you on all of this as well. And hopefully you will benefit immensely from what we're doing. So for those of you who don't know who Senator Chuck Schumer is, he is, of course, a senator in the United States Senate. I disagree with virtually every perspective that this man has, and he has done more damage to our country than you can possibly imagine. But he does say some things here that are very intelligent. Actually, an overwhelming majority of what he says here is very intelligent. It's the motive behind his communication. Some of it is misinformed, but I'm going to let you kind of get a really good picture of what he's trying to communicate, and I'm going to use his words in an attempt to better educate you and deal with the common perceptions that exist amongst the public because of the things that are actually being said. So I think you guys will be blessed by this. I hope you will be. It should be a lot of fun. And hopefully, my desire is by the time you get to the end of this video, you will have learned a whole lot more about things that are going on specifically in the region just by virtue of the fact that I'm taking the time to analyze things and provide for you some instant feedback regarding some things that really need to be straightened out. So let's listen to this. And I actually think you'll be pleasantly surprised with a lot of the good things that he says, even though I would never trust him. There are some things that he says that are intelligent, but there's a whole lot more that's very damaging, and we'll get into this. So let's start with Senator Schumer talking about all of this.
I rise to speak today about what I believe can and should be the path forward to secure mutual peace and lasting prosperity for Israelis and Palestinians. I speak for myself, but I also speak for so many mainstream Jewish Americans, a silent majority whose nuanced views on the matter have never been well represented in this country's discussions about the war in Gaza.
Okay, I just want to say this. He's right and wrong about this. I do think that he does represent a large group of people that have a view on this, but it's only because they've been told what their view should actually be. And this is a very, very important nuance here. that I want everybody to understand. And I can also tell you that this may very well be a representation of the majority or a lot of Jews in the United States of America, but only people who don't really understand what's going on in the actual region, number one. Number two, he isn't being fair about the fact that he is representing them, because on many levels, right, he does not represent their heart. And we'll see that. So it's kind of a twofold thing, but you'll see him do this a lot. There's a lot of manipulation involved here, and I'll explain that in just 1 second so that you can see a better picture of what's going on. He's about to, right now, establish something with you to try to add to his credibility, and you'll be able to see right through this as soon as I explain it, but it is very interesting to see what he does here.
My last name is Schumer, which derives from the Hebrew word shomer, or guardian. Of course, my first responsibility is to America and to New York. But as the first Jewish majority leader of the United States Senate and the highest-ranking Jewish elected official in America ever, I also feel very keenly my responsibility as a shomer Yisrael, a guardian of the people of Israel.
Okay, so I want to stop because it is important to address this, right? He's referring to himself as a guardian of the people of Israel. He's using Hebrew terminology. He's invoking his name. But this is a tactic that you see the left deploy on a regular basis, and he's doing it here, and he's actually very good at doing it, okay? First and foremost, I want to make myself very clear. I oftentimes represent myself to be a man who's first generation born into this country, not to establish moral authority, but rather to basically bring you into an understanding of the fact that I have a certain level of awareness about many of the things that surround the culture and the geopolitics of the area, okay? What Chuck Schumer is doing right now is going a little bit beyond that. You're going to see this, right? I want to set you up to understand it. He's actually establishing his background as a Jewish man to in essence, create a certain level of moral authority that is very absolute in nature. So he wants you to develop a trust in what he's about to say, and a lot of what he says involves the prefacing of many things, okay? He's not going to make an absolute statement and go, that's the way it is, stop right there. There's nothing else to say. No, he's going to nuance everything. That's very dangerous because it becomes very one-sided. And I want you to understand, he wants to establish his moral authority not on the basis of merit. He's establishing his moral authority based on his cultural identity or based on his ethnicity. And that's a very, very dangerous place to be. But I want you to be aware of that, of the fact that that's actually what's happening, okay?
Throughout Jewish history, there have been many Shomrim, and plenty who are far greater than I claim to be. But nonetheless, this is the position in which I find myself now, at a time of great difficulty for the state of Israel, for the Jewish people, and for non-Jewish friends of Israel. So I feel an immense obligation to speak and to act. I speak as a member of a community of Jewish Americans that I know very well. They're my family, my friends. Many of them are my constituents, many of them are Democrats, and many are deeply concerned about the pursuit of justice, both in New York and around the globe. From the Talmud, Tikkun Olam, the call to, quote, repair the world, has driven Jews around the globe to do what is right. We love Israel in our bones. What Israel has meant to my generation within living memory of the Holocaust is impossible to measure. The flowering of the Jewish people in the desert, from the ashes of the Holocaust, and the fulfillment of the dream of a Jewish homeland after nearly 2,000 years of praying and waiting, represents one of the most heartfelt causes of my life. And unlike some younger Americans, I remember how hard it was to achieve that dream. I remember clutching my transistor radio to my ear in James Madison High School in 1967 during the Six-Day War, wondering if Israel would be pushed into the sea. If the events of the last few months have made anything clear, It is that Israel is surrounded by vicious enemies, and there are many people around the world who excuse and even support their aims to expel and kill Jews living in their hard-won land of refuge.
Again, he's right. This is a very intelligent articulation of one of the major matters that exist before us. He's not wrong about this. He's absolutely right. And he's going to continue to very, very articulately express, I said articulately, he's going to articulately express some very important issues that are here, okay? All of this is designed on many levels to bring you into a certain trust level so that when he brings in other points of view, some very nefarious in nature, others just based on simple misinformation, you are going to be sort of lulled in to want to trust what he has to say. And I'm going to show you where things are broken here and where the strengths are. Right now, we're looking at a lot of strength in what he's saying. A lot of what he's saying is absolutely correct, especially when he starts talking about the discussion of colonization and so on and so forth. He's going to be very, very powerful in his assertions concerning many of these matters. But we haven't seen the bad part yet. Why? Because he's bringing you in with a lot of very intelligent statements and some really smart arguments. Okay? So let's continue on.
I will never underestimate the grave threats Israel faces and has faced for the entirety of its existence, nor will I ever underestimate the oppression that the Jewish people have endured for millennia. It is precisely out of this long-standing connection to and concern for the state of Israel and its people that I speak today about what I view are the most pressing existential threats to Israel's long-term peace and prosperity. After 5 months of suffering on both sides of this conflict, our thinking must turn urgently to how we can achieve lasting peace and endure and ensure prosperity and security for both the Jewish people and the Palestinian people in.
Okay, I want to stop because there is one very important nuance that I have to bring into play here, and it's really critical, okay? He's talking about lasting peace, and lasting peace is something that everybody wants, okay? First of all, as students of the Bible, we know that the only time we'll see lasting peace is when the Prince of Peace comes. We know that, okay? We also know that we should be praying for the peace of Jerusalem. We also know that we should do everything that we can to support Jerusalem because the Bible tells us to do that. It tells us to support the nation of Israel. So with all of those things said, I want to make one very clear stipulation here. And I think that most people would stipulate to this. Most people would agree to this statement. You are not going to be able to establish any type of long-term peace if one of both parties is dead. Does that make sense? So the whole idea with Israel is not a matter of making moves to establish long-term peace. Right now, Israel is on the course to actually survive. And what a lot of people don't understand is not just those that are in Hamas, not just them that hold this view, but the other people that hold this view are the Palestinian Authority. They all believe that there should not be a two-state solution. There should be a one-state solution, and that one state not have any Jews living in it. Okay? So there's a real serious issue here with the discussion of from the river to the sea. We need to make that clear here. We're not messing around. We can't be playing games. Understand what's really happening here. Okay? So what good is the lasting peace if you're not alive to negotiate it? So there's a much bigger issue here, and the issue must be the elimination of Hamas. And as long as Hamas is in the picture, Hamas is always going to drag in civilians. This is the core issue that I want everybody to understand as he continues to make these arguments and has this discussion. It's really, really important, okay? So let's continue on.
The Middle East. I believe that to achieve that lasting peace, which we so long for, Israel must make some significant course corrections, which I will outline in this speech. But first, let's not forget how we arrived at this critical moment. What Hamas did on October 7th was brutal.
Okay, so once again, I need to do this, okay? I need to make myself very, very clear here. He says he drops the bomb. It's a big bomb. Israel has to make some course corrections if they're going to establish lasting peace. He doesn't say the Palestinians do. He doesn't say the Arab world does. He doesn't say, all the other parties that are inserting themselves in this. He's not saying America has to make course changes. He's saying Israel does. So he's placing the incumbency upon Israel, which is a very aggressive statement to make. He is placing all of the responsibility on Israel, and now he's going to reel it back. Now he's going to reel it back. Now that he's made such a crazy statement, he's going to reel it back by bringing you back into an understanding of the atrocities that happened on October the 7th. And he'll expand the description of those atrocities by even bringing into play what has happened with Jews over the years. Okay, so remember, he just made an outrageous statement. This is called pushing the Overton window, right? It's a form of gaslighting. And now what he's going to do is bring you back in by basically explaining the terrible atrocities that took place on October the 7th. He has already invoked the Holocaust. He will do it again. And he is going to use all of this to bring you around into a perspective that is in many ways very short-sighted. Okay? So I just want you to be prepared for what's going on. Because, guys, look, what we're doing right here is very indicative of what you see when most people in the media are discussing this issue. They are using the same tactics that Senator Schumer is using right now. And I'm telling you, Senator Schumer makes it really, really hard to discern because he's not a dummy. Okay? That's the thing. Like, if he was a dumb man, and if he was just an ignorant fool, man, this would be easy. Like, I would just put him on display and just, watch everybody make crazy comments. But that's not what's going on here. He's making very complicated, very well-poised arguments concerning some partial truths, and in some cases, some whole truths, which is why it becomes very hard to delineate the matters that he brings forth. So this is critical for us to be able to understand what's happening here and what he's actually doing. And I'm telling you guys, if he was just an idiot, right, this would be easy. This wouldn't be a difficult process. But this is some very calculated stuff that's being said. And there's a reason why the man is good at what he does. He's been a politician for a very, very long time. He gets paid to speak. And that's what he's good at doing. So we have to really be careful and be on our guard and watch this and pay attention to what's actually being said here.
Beyond imagination, I have sat with the families of those killed in the assault. I have seen the footage and heard the stories of innocents murdered and raped in heartless cruelty. And as long as I live, I will never forget these images, this pure and premeditated evil. Many of my family members were killed by Nazis in the Holocaust. October 7th and the shameless response to support that terrorist attack by some in America and around the globe have awakened the deepest fears of the Jewish people that our annihilation remains a possibility. Today, over 130 hostages remain captive in Gaza. I am anguished by the plight of so many hostages still being trapped deep inside Hamas's network of tunnels. I pray for them and for their families who've inspired me with their tenacious advocacy to ensure their loved ones are not forgotten. Many of them are Americans, Jonathan Deckel Chen, Hirsch Goldberg Poland, and some are my constituents in New York, Omer Nutra, Keith Siegel, and Itai Chen, who we tragically learned this week was brutally killed on October 7th while serving near the Gaza border. Hamas still holds his body. His father gave me this pin, which I am wearing in remembrance of him, as well as those of Americans Judy Weinstein and Gad Haggai. I have sat with many of these families. I have wept with them. Each day that their loved ones don't come home carries enough anguish and grief to last a lifetime. I am working in every way I can to support the Biden administration as negotiations continue to free every last one of the hostages. I urge every actor at the table, the Israelis, the Biden administration, the Qataris, the Egyptians, and anybody else at the table, to continue doing everything possible to get a deal.
Notice he said the Egyptians, the Israelis, the Qataris, right? The Biden administration. He's not bringing up the Palestinians. He's not bringing up Hamas. Okay. Again, he's very good at that. He's very articulate, but these subtleties are subtleties we need to pay attention to. This is not, look, this is not something that's being done accidentally. He's invoking a lot of the things that we just talked about. I don't have to go back and rehearse all of this stuff in an attempt to really bring you in, because his arguments are being very well postured, right? The whole idea of manipulating somebody or changing their perspective on a matter involves laying a whole lot of groundwork done to bring them in, and then it's a simple bam, I got you, right? He's doing this, okay? A lot of what he says is phenomenally smart. He's not saying ignorant things. So much of what he said is true. I felt the same emotion when I watched those murders. I felt the same kind of frustration in seeing how so many innocent lives were being exploited the way they were, while Americans, many Americans in the public school campuses and so on and so forth were running around saying from the river to the sea. They have no idea what they're talking about. So I get this, but you have to pay attention to where he's taking this, okay? Again, he mentions all these people. He mentions a few Arab nations. He talks about Qatar. He talks about Egypt. He talks about Israel, but he's not mentioning the Palestinians when it comes to the discussion of the solution. There's a problem with that. There's a massive problem with that.
Hamas has been given a deal already. They should say yes. It is no time to waste. My heart also breaks at the loss of so many civilian lives in Gaza. I'm anguished that the Israeli war campaign has killed so many innocent Palestinians.
Pay attention to keywords, right? The Israeli war campaign. Okay? This is not, to him, the way he's describing it, this is not the Israeli life-changing or saving operation. This is not the Israeli campaign to secure the nation. This is not the Israeli campaign to bring stability back to their environment and to their world. Guys, I want you to understand, in the north of Israel right now, there are thousands of people who are not living in their homes because of the fear of some form of reprisal coming from Hezbollah to the north, which is already happening. Those fears are becoming a realization. So when he talks about the Israel war campaign, he is making it sound like these are people who are just simply seeking to destroy other nations for the sake of conquest, when in reality, this is Israel's security, recovery, and hostage-freeing campaign. Okay, let's use correct terminology. Again, he's already bought you in. He's earned some of your trust. Oh, I feel with the Israelis. Oh, I feel with the Jews. I myself am a Jew. I'm a watcher. I'm one of these men that are supposed to secure and protect, and I feel called to act. But look at the inflammatory terminology that's being used. This is not a coincidence, people. By the way, understand this. Look, brothers and sisters, follow me when I tell you this, okay? This is the same type of avenue that you will see the rest of the world go down. Chuck Schumer provides for us such a remarkable way to understand what the worldview is on this. It makes a really good opportunity for us to better understand things that are happening. Very important stuff here, okay? All right, let's continue on.
Palestinians. I know that my fellow Jewish Americans feel the same anguish when they see the images of dead and starving children and destroyed homes. Gaza is experiencing a humanitarian catastrophe. Entire families wiped out, whole neighborhoods reduced to rubble, mass displacement, children suffering. We should not let the complexities of this conflict stop us from stating the plain truth. Palestinian civilians do not deserve to suffer for the sins of Hamas, and Israel has a moral obligation to do better.
Here's the problem with that. Okay, and this is one of those areas where he's just making an outright lie. The first part of that statement is correct. Palestinian children and Palestinian citizens do not deserve to suffer the reprisal or the consequence, as he would say, of Hamas's criminal and absolutely barbaric activity. Okay, the problem is that an overwhelming amount of people in this region of Gaza support the actions of Hamas, and if they were to vote for Hamas today, 75% of them would still vote for them. I'm not saying that that is reason for justification for the kind of suffering that's going on. But the problem here is that this is not a matter of Israel needing to do better. We already know on record that Israel is ranked amongst some of the best in terms of how it deals with the type of losses that happen with civilians considering the situation that they're in. This must be an understanding that the civilians do not deserve to experience the consequences of the actions of Hamas and not Israel, okay? Because Israel has to defend themselves. If they do not defend themselves in the name of saving civilians, then hundreds and thousands, if not millions, of more civilians are going to die. So they have to do what they have to do, and the blame should solely lay upon Hamas. Hamas is the ones that are using civilians as shields and placing themselves in civilian territory. This is such a critical point, folks. We cannot allow this to be missed amongst us, okay? It's not as simple as Chuck Schumer is saying that it is. It's really important that we recognize that.
The United States has an obligation to do better. I believe the United States must provide you robust humanitarian aid to Gaza and pressure the Israelis to let more of it get through to the people who need it.
Again, one more thing, you will hear me disrupt things like this, okay? The problem with allowing more humanitarian aid to get through, like he's claiming, is by doing that, you're opening up a gateway for Hamas to regroup and continue to do the evil, nefarious things that they're doing. The UN was talking about the fact that you're allowing our workers to die, Israel, and it's your fault. Now we're finding out that these UNRWA workers were actually participating in the actions against Israelis, against Jews on October the 7th. So again, he's oversimplifying the issue. He's not providing the nuance necessary so that people will better understand what's actually going on. And it's a darn near crime that he's framing it this way, right? It's not fair. And the idea of the United States should do better, Israel should do better, well, darn straight, I guess so. But why aren't we calling the real people on the carpet? And that's Hamas. Hamas are the ones that are creating this circumstance. I don't know how many different ways to put this in people's head. Hamas is doing this. Very important.
Jewish people throughout the centuries have empathized with those who are suffering and who are oppressed because we have known so much of that ourselves. As the Torah teaches us, every human life is precious. Every single innocent life lost, whether Israeli or Palestinian, is a tragedy. As the scripture says, quote, destroys an entire world.
I do want you to understand something. I want you to understand the insanity found upon Chuck Schumer, where he says the Torah tells us that every human life is valuable. And he's even willing to quote the Torah. And he's making a stand regarding innocent Palestinian children and preserving their life, and yet he is at the forefront, at the literal forefront of promoting abortion in this country. He is one of the greatest proponents of abortion in this country. So he is very excited about the idea of 3,000 little babies being killed every single day in our country. Yet at the same time, he's saying that the Torah says, right, that we should preserve human life, and he's standing on that in order to condemn the position of Israel, even though in the last 10 days we have lost more babies than all of the Palestinians have been lost throughout the beginning or from the beginning of October the 7th. Think about that for a second. In the last 10 days, folks, we have lost more babies in the last 10 days than what they have lost this whole time in Gaza. So understand the hypocrisy that's falling upon him and the vitriol that comes out of his mouth when he makes those representations. It's pure evil hypocrisy. I just want to point that out.
What horrifies so many Jews especially is our sense that Israel is falling short of upholding these distinctly Jewish values that we hold so dear.
And he's wrong about that. What's actually horrifying Jews is the fact that they are getting killed, and there are people around the world that are supporting that. What's horrifying Jews is what appears to be the lack of moral clarity that people seem to be exhibiting concerning the fact that they have the right to defend themselves and protect themselves in continuing to do what they're doing in hopes to bring back any hostages that might be alive and in hopes to secure the nation, which they have the right to be able to protect. That's the real issue, Chuck Schumer. Let's not get it twisted.
we must be better than our enemies, lest we become them. Israel has a fundamental right to defend itself, but as I have said from the beginning of this war, how it exercises that right matters. Israel must prioritize the protection of civilian casualties when identifying military targets. I have repeatedly called upon the Israeli government to do so.
Shame on Chuck Schumer, and I'll tell you why shame on Chuck Schumer, because the Israeli government is the only government in the world that actually does notifications before they bomb targets, okay? Israel is the only military in the world that does the type of things that they do in order to make people aware of what's going on so that the casualties are mitigated, okay? So don't come to me, Chuck Schumer, and tell me that it's hypocrisy, it's a straight lie. And by the way, it is a form of political maneuvering. This is the nefarious section of what I'm talking about, okay? He's made some very intelligent statements, correct statements. Some of them will be found in being misinformed. We'll get into that a little bit, right? But this is where it gets really ugly and really nefarious. We can see the hypocrisy, him standing upon the ground of basically defending human life and human rights and so on and so forth, yet at the same time, he's murdering 3,000 babies a day, right? And then you continue to see him oversimplifying a matter and bringing it down to an area that is so unbelievably broken because it's founded on untruth, that he's using the manipulation to change your perspective on an issue by simply bringing a straw man up, okay? And you're going to see that happening. He does it a whole bunch of times. It's really ugly, but let's just pay attention to what he says here.
But it also must be said that Israel is by no means the only one responsible for the immense civilian toll.
See, so I want you to understand. Oh, I got you in by making Israel responsible, but now I've got to say they're not the only ones responsible. So this is his way of like pushing the Overton window, right? He's getting you to sort of agree to something, then bringing you back in, then reeling you out, then bringing you back in. And as that time is happening, the space is increasing, and it's increasing, and it's increasing. That's what we're seeing here.
Blame only Israel for the deaths of Palestinians is unfair, one-sided, and often deliberately manipulative.
He's right.
And it
it's
ignores
true.
Hamas's role in this conflict.
But here we go.
Hamas has knowingly invited an immense civilian toll during this war. Their goal on October 7th was to provoke a tough response from Israel by killing as many Jews as possible in the most vicious manner possible, raping
100%
women,
right.
executing babies, desecrating bodies, brutalizing whole communities.
100% right. And if it was full stop, then Chuck Schumer would be vindicated right here. He would be completely vindicated. 100% correct statement. Really, really powerful statement. But look what he does next.
Since then, Hamas has heartlessly hidden behind their fellow Palestinians by turning hospitals into command centers and refugee camps into missile launching sites. It is well documented that Hamas soldiers use innocent Gazans as human shields. The leaders of Hamas, many of whom live lives of luxury in places far away from the poverty and misfortune of Gaza, do not care one iota about the Palestinians for whom they claim to nobly fight.
Now, if it was a full stop and that's all he said, this would be amazing. It would be an unprecedented statement made by somebody from the left. It would be. Even a Jew on the left. But look what he continues to say. Wait for it, folks. He's setting you up for the hook.
It bothers me deeply that most media outlets covering this war and many protesters opposing it have placed the blame for civilian casualties entirely on Israel.
Entirely on Israel. So what he's implying is some of the blame should be Hamas, but we still need to blame Israel a little bit, right? Look at how subtle he is in doing this. By the way, I want to point this stuff out because this is the stuff that you will see in the media, folks. This is going to help you decipher these media reports when they come your way. Dealing with this directly as it is placed in front of you is, by the time you finish watching this video, you are going to learn how to completely defeat the normal arguments that come up in the media. Very important that we provide the correct analysis here.
All too often in the media and at protests, It is never noted that Hamas has gone to great lengths to make themselves inseparable from the civilian population of Gaza.
He's
By
right.
using Palestinians as human shields.
He's right.
Too many news agencies, television stations, newspapers give Hamas a pass by hardly ever discovering this shameful practice that is central to their fighting strategy.
He's right.
And this has led to an inaccurate perception of the harsh realities of this war. I believe stories that justifiably mention the loss of innocent Palestinian life should also note how Hamas uses civilians as human shields. It almost never happens. And I believe that every protest that justifiably decries the loss of innocent Palestinian women, men, children, should also denounce Hamas for their central role in the bloodshed. When protesters decry the loss of Palestinian life, but never condemn this perfidy or the loss of Israeli lives, it confounds and deeply troubles the vast majority of Jewish and non-Jewish Americans alike.
He's right. 100%. You wish it would be a full stop there, but it's not. Because look at what he's about to do. And folks, I'm telling you, pay close attention to this because it is extraordinarily subtle. Extraordinarily subtle. Pay attention.
Who support the state of Israel. Given that Hamas launched their attacks on October 7th to provoke Israel, given that Hamas sought the ensuing civilian toll in Gaza, given that Hamas wanted both Israelis and Arabs to be at each other's throats, tensions on both sides have dramatically intensified. And now, as a result of those inflamed tensions in both Israeli and Palestinian communities, people on all sides of this war are turning away from a two-state solution, including Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu.
So here's the lie. Because of this, both parties are turning away from a two-state solution. Okay, it's wrong. Israel, for a very long time, has done everything but bend over backwards, and in some cases, they've even bent over backwards in order to create a viable two-state solution. It has always been rejected completely by the Palestinian Authority or anybody else negotiating it. Let me take this a step further because we're going to get into this video a little bit later. The Palestinians themselves make it clear, we don't want a two-state solution. We want a one-state solution. And that one-state solution involves the elimination of the Jewish race, the destruction of the state of Israel. So the mischaracterization by Chuck Schumer to actually say there's some form of delineation between what could have been and what is about to become is a complete lie. He is not being truthful here. He is manipulating the circumstance to create a picture that is absolutely not accurate. It's very important that you understand this, everybody. Extraordinarily important that you understand this. Super, super critical.
Who in recent weeks has said out loud repeatedly what many have long suspected by outright rejecting the idea of Palestinian statehood and sovereignty. As the highest-ranking Jewish elected official in our government and as a staunch defender of Israel, I rise today to say unequivocally, this is a grave mistake for Israel, for Palestinians, for the region, and for the world.
So the greatest problem that I see here is that Chuck Schumer is now weakening the position of the Prime Minister of Israel, who quite frankly has a very good grasp on the position that the Jews need to take here. He is correct. Prime Minister Netanyahu is correct when he says this is the position of almost all of Israel. And he's right about it. Listen, folks, when it was voted for in the Knesset, understand everybody in the government voted except 9 people. And you know who those people were that voted against this? The Arabs, okay? And even some Arabs in some of the parties actually voted in complete solidarity with the position of Netanyahu. So for Chuck Schumer to stand and say, I'm the highest ranking Jew in the country, great. But it doesn't do you any good or anybody else any good to pretend that somehow you understand the region, you know the politics of the region, and you're aware of the issues at hand. Much easier for him to make those assertions when he lives in the United States of America and enjoys the protections of being in a country that is surrounded mostly by water. So let's actually get real about what's really happening here. He is making a grave mistake. He is completely wrong. Understand this, folks. He spends more time condemning Bibi Netanyahu than he does Mahmoud Abbas, and more time condemning Netanyahu than he even does specific leaders in Hamas. He doesn't even name specific leaders in Hamas. So there's a huge mistake that he's making here. I don't think it's a mistake. I think it's very nefarious in nature. I think where the mistake happens is his understanding of what reality is. I think that's what's driving it here.
The only real and sustainable solution to this decades-old conflict is a negotiated two-state solution, a demilitarized Palestinian state living side by side with Israel in equal measures of peace, security, prosperity, dignity, and mutual recognition. Both Jews and Palestinians have long historic claims to this land. Contrary to the unfounded, absurd, and offensive claims by some that the Jewish people are colonizers in their ancestral homeland, Jewish people have lived in the homeland continuously for more than 3 millennia, 3,000 years.
He's right about that. It's actually longer than that. And he's right. The Jews being colonizers is just a baloney lie. How can you be a colonizer when you've lived in that land forever? But look what he's about to do. He's about to take the strength of the argument that it's impossible for the Jews to be colonizers, and he is about to remove the delineation between Jews and Palestinians and make an argument that the Palestinians have been there for equally as long or for a very, very long time, and they themselves deserve the ability to have the same right to the land. Nothing could be further from the truth. And I'm going to show you how he does this. Watch this.
For centuries, Jews have made aliyah and gone to the land of Israel to live and settle. For centuries at Passover, Jews at every corner of the globe have prayed next year in Jerusalem. A Jewish homeland in Israel is no 20th century contrivance. Israel's our historic home, a home for people oppressed for centuries. Now, the Palestinians, too, have lived on the land for generations. And in past centuries, they have formed their own distinct culture, identity, cuisine, literature.
Did you know what he said? I actually want to rewind this so that you can see or you can hear exactly what he said regarding the Palestinians and how they've lived. Okay? Listen very closely to how he tries to blur the lines. Listen to this.
In Jerusalem. A Jewish homeland in Israel is no 20th century contrivance. Israel's our historic home, a home for people oppressed for
Take a listen to what he
centuries.
does with Palestinians here. Listen.
Now, the Palestinians, too, have lived on the land for generations. And in past centuries,
Notice how he said, the Palestinians have lived too on the land for past generations. He's telling the truth. He's not being inaccurate. He is talking about 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, 70 years. That would be correct. We know that the term Palestinian was created almost 2,000 years ago by a Roman emperor that actually gave that title to the Jews in the land, named after their enemies, Palestina. The Palestinians was a term that was derived from the Philistines. And it was them that were being regarded as Palestinians. The first Palestinians in the land were Jews. They were referred to as Palestinians by that early Roman emperor. But notice how he says the generations have been living in the land. That's a very carefully crafted set of words. And then he says over centuries have been developing their culture. Of course, over the centuries of developing the culture, of course, in the nations surrounding, like Jordan, specifically Jordan, Syria, and many in Egypt. Make sure you understand this, folks, because this is the manipulation that he's bringing into play.
they have formed their own distinct culture, identity, cuisine, literature. The idea espoused by some, quote, there is no such thing as Palestinians, unquote, is inaccurate, offensive, unhelpful.
Well, and by the way, I mean, you to say there is no such thing as Palestinians he's right. It's offensive, it's inaccurate, it's not helpful, because there are such things as Palestinians. But let's get the history right? Right now, there are a group of people, there are Arabs that live in Israel that they are called Palestinians. Most of them come from Jordan, some come from Syria, and many of them come from, of course, Egypt. Okay, so let's characterize them correctly. There are such a thing as Palestinians. He is overemphasizing a particular point that people make ignorantly, not understanding the reality of what's going on, so that he can discredit them. He's removing fact from the actual argument. This is critical for us to understand. Critical.
The only just solution to this predicament is one in which each people can flourish in their own state, side by side. But for a two-state solution to work over the long term, it has to include real and meaningful compromises by both sides. For example, too many Israelis who say they want a two-state solution don't acknowledge how the amount and extent of expanding settlements renders that a virtual impossibility. And too many Palestinians who say they want a two-state solution don't acknowledge how their insistence on an unequivocal right of return is a fatal impediment to progress.
But you guys understand that one cancels out the other? So when he talks about the idea that it's unreasonable and almost ridiculous for Jews to expand their settlement, right, is canceled out by the statement that he makes regarding the Palestinians. He says it's unreasonable for Palestinians to have this sort of entitlement sense regarding their right to possess some sort of land, when in reality, that's the very thing that drives the problem with the Jews reclaiming their settlements. These areas were taken from them. People have to understand what's going on. It's in essence a self-defeating argument that Senator Schumer is throwing out here. And this is the area where I actually say it's founded in a little bit of ignorance. This is an area where I do really genuinely believe he does not completely understand the complexities of the claims to land that are being made by both sides, right? Because he doesn't want to acknowledge the things he has to acknowledge in order to be able to clearly develop a strong moral understanding of what's actually happening. He's on purpose allowing himself to be ignorant of these issues because he does not want to have to face the problem that he is going to face with his political infrastructure set around him that's going to require him to acknowledge something that he knows will be detrimental for him to acknowledge. This is a very important point, okay? So much of the ignorance that you see right now around the world is based on a willful desire to be ignorant. Because, for lack of a better term, lots of people have made their deal with the devil, okay? And the devil will not allow Jews to have that kind of benefit. He just won't. He does not want, praise God, they're God's ancestrally chosen people, and God will always protect them. But this is a very important point to make. It's really critical that everybody understand this.
Both ways of thinking are impeding the peace process. And there are others on the left who view a two-state solution with skepticism as an ideal that will never happen, a far-off goal that allows for the continuation of the status quo in Gaza and the West Bank, where Palestinians face unique obstacles compared to their Israeli counterparts. As a result, they reject a two-state solution in favor of one state, where Palestinians and Israelis would supposedly live in democratic peace, side by side. I can understand the idealism that inspires so many young people in particular to support a one-state solution. Why can't we all live side by side and house by house in peace? I count at least two reasons why this wouldn't work and why it is unacceptable to most Jewish people. First, this combined state could take an extreme turn politically, putting Jewish Israelis in peril. This state would be a majority Palestinian, and in the past, some Palestinians have voted to empower groups like Hamas, which seeks to eradicate the Jewish people. It is long-standing.
I want you to notice that he's not identifying the Palestinian Authority as a group that has long stood to basically eliminate the Jewish people. Again, this stuff has to be exposed. There is no formation of any government or pseudo-government that has ever existed amongst the Palestinians that have not had a desire to eliminate the Jewish state and eliminate all Jews. Not a single government, not a single organized group of people amongst Palestinians that have felt that way. Not a single one. And the Palestinians that are supportive of Israel are active citizens of Israel who are experiencing the benefits that come with actually being an Israeli citizen. Some of the richest people in the region are Palestinians that are living in Israel and cooperating, serving in the IDF, and being a part of everything that is the Jewish state. Let me make myself very, very clear. One of the richest men in the country is a Palestinian man. There's not more to say about this.
American policy to support democracy overseas. But in this hypothetical single state, democracy could cost Israeli Jews their safety if extremists were to take control of this new state of affairs to ultimately achieve their true aim, the violent expulsion of Jews from the Holy Land. Now, this is no abstract fear. Thousands of years of Jewish history show that when things go badly, the people of the country in which Jews live, even in a democracy, all too often turn on them as convenient scapegoats.
But he's basing their feelings on history, which, by the way, their feelings are very much legitimized by their history. But the feelings that Jews have right now is not founded in an abstract thought regarding anything in history. Like Senator Schumer said, it's being founded in what's currently going on right now, in the moment. And it's a legitimate fear. Those fears were realized by the worst attack since the Holocaust. Okay? So this is really important that this be emphasized. Schumer doesn't want you to understand that.
There's no guarantee this wouldn't happen again in a single Israeli-Palestinian state. To have Palestinian voters be the protector of Israeli Jews would be a bridge too far to accept. Second, and even more important, the Jewish people have a right to their own state. It is so troubling to me that many people, especially on the left, seem to acknowledge and even celebrate this right to statehood for every group but the Jews. If a national homeland for all peoples of the world has been the driving goal of the anti-colonial movement of the last century, then why are only Jews seemingly penalized for this aspiration? Jews have a human right to their own state, just as any other people do, Palestinians included. As I have said, there are also some Israelis who oppose even a two-state solution with a demilitarized Palestinian state because they fear that it might tolerate or be a harbor for further terrorism against a Jewish state. I understand these fears, but the bitter reality is that a single state controlled by Israel, which they advocate, guarantees certain war forever and further isolation of the Jewish community in the world to the extent that its future would be jeopardized.
But do you understand the insanity behind that statement, right? The insanity behind that statement, apply that statement to the United States of America, right? Apply that statement to any sovereign nation. It's absolutely absurd. No one would receive the premise of that statement, not a single person. The idea here is that Israel, rightly and correctly so, possesses the land. They were attacked on multiple occasions. They successfully defended themselves against those attacks. The land that Israel possessed was far smaller during 1948 than it is now. And the only reason why the Israelis have that land the way they have it today is because they've been attacked by Arab nations that have surrounded them again and again and again and again and again. So the idea that Chuck Schumer is placing this really unfounded expectation that Israel just turn over and give over land that rightly belongs to them is obscene. It's an absolutely absurd ideal. It's ridiculous.
Let me elaborate. They say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. If Israel were to not only maintain the status quo, but to go beyond that and tighten its control over Gaza and the West Bank, as some in the current Netanyahu administration have suggested, in effect creating a de facto single state, then what reasonable expectation can we have that Hamas and their allies will lay down their arms?
Okay, but this is the problem, and I want to make myself very, very clear. He says this. He says it's the definition of insanity is to do the same thing again and again and again and expect a different result. So if you pursue a two-state solution, that is the definition of insanity. Because for the last 80 years, Israel has been pursuing the weird idea that there can be a two-state solution. And every single time they've pursued it, it's backfired on them. So what Chuck Schumer is saying is that Israel should not be a single-state solution because that would be them trying to do the same thing again and again and again. Actually, no. The shift in policy amongst Israeli government to want to pursue a single-state solution is actually them doing something completely different. It's them straying away from the insanity of trying the same thing again and again and again that doesn't work and expecting a different result. You understand the manipulation and what Senator Schumer is bringing up here. He's wrong. Chucky is wrong. And I want you guys to see it. By the way, the rest of the media world utilizes these same arguments. This is why I want you to see it for what it is. I want to bring clarity into the picture so that you can better understand what he's doing here.
It would mean constant war. On top of that, Israel moving closer to a single state entirely under its control would further rupture its relationship with the rest of the world, including the United States.
And the thing that I think is really funny is he's already putting out this crazy ultimatum saying that if Israel pursues a single state solution, that United States will be at war with them. That's not true, number one. Number two, I think perhaps more importantly and more significantly, every single Arab country right now in the world is a single state solution. And when the Palestinians came into their country and tried to destroy that and create some kind of a pseudo semi-two-state solution, you know what they did? They destroyed those lives. Look at what Jordan did in the late 70s. Look at what happened in Lebanon. How about we get real for just 1 second and think about this. In one foul swoop over the course of a couple of days, King Hussein of Jordan destroyed 30,000 Palestinian lives overnight, literally, instantly. Egypt has got this massive wall set up that's bigger than our southern border wall because they don't want Palestinians in their country. They do not want the idea that Islamic Brotherhood can come in and create some weird half-cocked two-state solution that they know will never work. So why is it that Israel doesn't have the right to pursue the same kind of security? This is where Chuck Schumer is dead wrong. He's crazy.
Support for Israel has declined worldwide in the last few months, and this trend will only get worse if the Israeli government continues to follow its current path.
And by the way, it's declined over the last few months, and the reason why is because the Bible says that in the last days that would happen. Read Zechariah chapter 12. We know what the Bible says concerning these things, and I think it's very, very important that we understand that.
I appreciate that so many Israelis cannot contemplate the possibility of two states right now because they remain so traumatized and so angry by what Hamas did on October 7th. The brutality, the viciousness, the sexual assault, the imprisonment and abuse of hundreds of hostages. I'm, of course, sympathetic to this point of view. I'm upset. I'm angry, too. We'll never forget what happened on October 7th. But even while we carry that anguish in our hearts, we have to think ahead to the future, the medium, the long term, how we can ensure that something like October 7th never happens again. We cannot let anger or trauma determine our actions or cloud our judgment. A two-state solution may feel daunting, especially now, but I believe it is the only realistic and sustainable solution on the basis of security, on the basis of prosperity, on the basis of fundamental human rights and dignity. But in order to achieve a two-state solution, the reality is that things must change. Right now, there are four major obstacles standing in the way of two states. And until they are removed from the equation, there will never be peace in Israel and Gaza and the West Bank.
Okay, so I just want to make myself very, very clear. You've heard the majority of the analysis necessary to be able to understand and defeat a lot of the arguments that Senator Schumer has made already. He's already starting on the false premise that there has to be a two-state solution, and there doesn't. And as quite a matter of fact, a two-state solution is going to continue to create a matter of insecurity and instability, not just in Israel, but in the region. Saudi Arabia knows that. Egypt knows that. Jordan knows that. Lebanon knows that. Syria knows that. Heck, Russia knows that, okay? Iran knows that even. That's why Iran is seeking to push it. Iraq knows that. All of the nations surrounding, Turkey knows that. Everybody knows that. So let's be real and let's develop an understanding for what's really going on. And this is the new level of propaganda that we're seeing right now in the Middle East, okay? So he's propagandizing this. And I'm telling you, he's very good at this, okay? So let's go back and take a listen. I am going to speed it up a little bit, okay, so that you can listen. But we are going to go over the 4 points really quickly. I'm going to address those really briefly, and then we'll let him voice the arguments, and we'll attempt to go through them relatively quickly. So here we go. Let's do this.
This two-state solution may feel daunting, especially now, but I believe it is the only realistic and sustainable solution on the basis of security, on the basis of prosperity, on the basis of fundamental human rights and dignity. But in order to achieve a two-state solution, the reality is that things must change. Right now, there are four major obstacles standing in the way of two states. And until they are removed from the equation, there will never be peace in Israel and Gaza and the West Bank. The four major obstacles are Hamas and the Palestinians who support and tolerate their evil ways, radical right-wing Israelis in government and society, Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Okay, do you understand the four arguments that he's just voiced? He says we have to get rid of Hamas and the Palestinians that support Hamas. So let me just help you understand this. Let me help you phrase this. We don't even have to get into his arguments for this. I can just do this very, very quickly, okay? Hamas and the Palestinians that support Hamas, they're a big problem, okay? The problem then, he's calling for the elimination of 75% of all Palestinians in the country. If you want to talk about real genocide, that's real genocide. He says, let's just get rid of Hamas and 75% of all Palestinians in the country. That is a way we can get to a two-state solution. Oh, really? It's not an intelligent argument. The second thing that he says we have to do is we have to get rid of all of the right-wing members of the Israeli government. He seems to be saying that here in the United States of America. If we want America to work, we need to get rid of all the right-wing politicians. People like Trump, people like me, and people like you. Because the right wing serves as the poison to everything that's necessary to be able to sustain anything. Tell me how that works. He's using the same kind of propaganda, the same exact type of propaganda, the same propaganda that he's using to try to destroy our country, to destroy Israel. The third thing that he says we have to eliminate is Mahmoud Abbas. I may have got him in the wrong order, but eliminate Mahmoud Abbas. Now, that's an obvious one. We eliminate Mahmoud Abbas, and very likely anybody who supports him, now you eliminate all the Palestinians. Just get rid of them all. That's in essence what he's saying. He's saying it in a very fancy way. He knows how completely unrealistic that is. He doesn't realize if you remove Hamas and all of the Palestinians that support Hamas, you remove 75% of the Arab population in the country. Then if you remove Mahmoud Abbas, which, by the way, I highly recommend that you watch the video that I did on Mahmoud Abbas and Benjamin Netanyahu, who gives you a really good picture of what really happened in Jewish history. And I'll post that video right here. You will understand very quickly that Mahmoud Abbas actually saw the Holocaust as actually a service and a favor to the world. So get rid of Mahmoud Abbas and anybody that, in essence, supports him. Okay, fine. And then he says, get rid of Benjamin Netanyahu. And what he'll actually say later on is he'll say, you need to get rid of Benjamin Netanyahu, and the way you do it is you need to he's going to actually call out for new elections. He wants new elections in Israel. He wants new elections in Gaza. He wants new elections in the Palestinian Authority. You understand how absolutely destabilizing that's going to end up becoming? And let's get into the whole idea of elections in Israel. I would be willing to argue that Chuck Schumer does not understand the intricacies of the parliamentary government that is Israel. I would be willing to bet you that he does not know the difference between the Likud party or any other party that exists within Israel that creates the formation of government that is the government under the control of Benjamin Netanyahu. I would be willing to bet the fact that he does not understand how the elections work, how the implications of those elections actually maneuver certain regions of the country, and how it dramatically affects how the rest of the world is being interacted with Israel. So to be able to say that in order to create a viable two-state solution, which, by the way, all of this time that I've been walking you through, folks, has been to prepare you to listen to the last 23 minutes of Chuck Schumer's statement. And the last 23 minutes of Chuck Schumer's statement is him describing how to eliminate all of them. Get rid of Bibi Netanyahu, do new elections, get rid of Mahmoud Abbas, get rid of Hamas. Notice he's not naming any specific leader. There's a reason why he's not naming any specific leader. Because he's dealing with the ungraspable, I'm losing the word. I'm being Joe Biden for a second. The unattainable ability to be able to understand the government structure of Hamas. They do this on purpose, by the way. Folks, everything that you are seeing right now that Chucky has just voiced to you is exactly that. I don't need to go over the rest of his speech. As a matter of fact, what I would recommend that you do is I would recommend that you go and you watch his speech. I recommend you watch the rest of his speech now that you've been equipped to be able to see what he's actually saying and what he's arguing. You will be able to better understand where he was going with all of this. Now, just so that you have a better idea of where these people actually stand, let's go to one of the leaders of Hamas and let's see what he has to say about a two-state solution. And by the way, I will tell you this. I don't have to translate this for you because I found a version of this video that actually has a translation below it. And it's actually a very, 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 very good translation. It's a very good translation. So I am going to air this for you. And I think that you should pay very special attention to what is actually being said here. This is super critical that you get this. Super critical that you see this. Okay? So let's watch what is actually being said in context, because it's very, very important to understanding what they think a two-state solution should look like. Here we go. Very important.
إنه هذا المعركة 7 أكتوبر فتحت أفق لموضوع الرؤية السياسية.
What he's saying is it's opened up a whole new opportunity for them. Let's continue to watch.
هنا يعودون إلى بضاعتهم القديمة حل الدولتين. وهنا أقول مسألتين في حل الدولتين. المسألة الأولى نحن لا نقبل حل الدولتين. هذا مصطلح مرفوض لأنه معناه أنك أنت لك دولة موعودة ومطلوب أنك أيضا تعترف بالدولة الأخرى اللي هي الكيان الصهيوني، تعترف بشرعيته. فهذه مرفوضة. نحن نطلب التحرر، تخلص من الاحتلال، ونريد استقلالنا ودولتنا. أنا غير هذا عدوي، أنا غير معني به. أنا
دولتنا اللي هي أي دولة
فلسطينية.
أي دولة فلسطينية.
طبعا إحنا بالنسبة لموقف حماس وموقف الشعب الفلسطيني في أغلبيته العظمى خاصة بعد 7 أكتوبر أظن تجدد الحلم والأمل. فلسطين من البحر إلى النهر، من الشمال إلى الجنوب. وهذا حتى كما قلت لك أصبح شعار في الولايات المتحدة وفي العواصم الغربية وعند الجمهور الغربي الأمريكي والغربي، إنه الشعب فلسطين حرة من النهر إلى البحر. هذه شعار الطلاب الأمريكان وفي العواصم الأوروبية كذلك. مشروعنا الفلسطيني اللي عليه شبه إجماع وطني فلسطيني، حتى اللي عنده رأي مضطر أن يقوله بسبب.
Guys get that? That depiction is the accurate projection of what they feel. I want nothing to do with a two-state solution is what he says. He says, if we have to have a two-state solution, that will require us to recognize that the Jews have a right to that land and we don't recognize them. We don't even recognize them as human beings. Folks, The Arabic translation is accurate. And then he mentions people like Chuck Schumer as supporting their position. I want you guys to see it for what it is. I want you guys to understand that when you look at Hamas, Hamas doesn't want a two-state solution. It's crazy to think that Hamas wants a two-state solution. They don't want a two-state solution. Let me go over what may be one of the most egregious portions of his speech. Chuck Schumer's speech. And again, it's frustrating to see him get to the point where he's willing to formulate such a lie. Listen to this. We'll spend a few minutes of this. You can watch the whole speech in its entirety. It's about a 45-minute speech, 44-minute speech. But listen to what he says here. Pay special attention to what he says.
Case of anti-Semitism extended to his refusal for weeks to condemn the loss of Israeli civilian life on October 7th. Should Abbas remain, the Palestinian people can have no assurance that a Palestinian state would be able to ensure their safety or prosperity, nor can they have any belief that the government would be free of corruption. For there to be any hope of peace in the future, Abbas must step down and be replaced by a new generation of Palestinian leaders who will work towards attaining peace with a Jewish state.
There will never be a generation of Palestinian leaders that will do that. I can tell you that right now. That is not the way it works. We know that it's been demonstrated to us over the last almost 100 years. But let's continue on.
Otherwise, the West Bank will continue to suffer, and Hamas or some similarly extreme organization will continue to maintain a foothold in Gaza. The Palestinian Authority, under new leadership, must undertake a reform process and emerge as a revitalized PA that can viably serve as the basis for a Palestinian state with the trust of the Palestinian people.
And this is where his ignorance comes in. He doesn't understand our culture. He doesn't understand the Middle Eastern mindset. He doesn't understand Islam. He doesn't understand what motivates these people, the thinking of the... I'm telling you right now, take it from a person who knows the culture and understands the culture. I'm telling you, he's ignorant. He does not recognize the fact that this is an impossibility. We know what the Bible says. There won't be peace in the Middle East until the Prince of Peace comes. But that's a whole other story.
The fourth major obstacle to peace is Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who has all too frequently bowed to the demands of extremists like Ministers Smotrich and Ben-Gvir and the settlers in the West Bank.
Which, by the way, these are not extremists. They're just not. I'm sorry. And the other problem is he calls a settler in the West Bank an extremist. So let me just frame this for you for just a second, okay? Your family for thousands of years have had a piece of property on the area known as Judea and Samaria. People call it the West Bank. You have always occupied that area. There were people who have lived in Israel far before the assembly of the nation of Israel in the modern state. And through the conquest of the Crusades, the Arabs, all the different things that have happened, the Turkish forces, all of that, they've come in and they've taken your land away. It's your land. They've taken it away. You find an opportunity to take that land back, and you do it relatively peaceably because people have abandoned the area. And you lay your stake in the land that was already yours from the very beginning. And you seek to settle into a land where you are desiring to make a safer place for your family. And now you're being labeled an extremist because you're doing it. Do you understand the ridiculousness of Chuck Schumer's statement? And let me make another statement about Bibi Netanyahu. You're insane if you're a government leader, especially in the United States of America, and during wartime, you put down the prowess of a leader who is doing his very best to defend his nation, who served faithfully in the military, who had a brother who gave his life for his country, and for a man who has dedicated himself and proven himself to be a man who loves his nation. And now you're going to label him as a right-wing extremist and all the other crazy things that you do. You are nuts, Chuck Schumer. I'm sorry. It's a crazy statement to make. There is nothing about that statement that is legitimate. Not one bit. But look at how irresponsible he's about to get. This, by the way, he's talking about a leader during wartime. During wartime. It would be as ridiculous as somebody getting up there and saying Churchill should walk away from being the leader of the United Kingdom while they're fighting Nazi Germany. It's that ridiculous. It's that obscene.
I have known Prime Minister Netanyahu for a very long time.
Who cares if you've known him for a very long time? That's just evidence of the fact that you're even more wrong for doing what you're doing. Because if you've known him for a very long time, then you know exactly what he's all about. Sorry.
While we have vehemently disagreed on many occasions, I will always respect his extraordinary bravery for Israel on the battlefield as a younger man. I believe in his heart he has his highest priority is the security of Israel. However, I also believe Prime Minister Netanyahu has lost his way by allowing his political survival to take the precedence over the best interests of Israel.
Isn't that amazing? He says he's lost his way by allowing his political survival to actually overtake the best interest of the nation of Israel. When this is a man who supports open borders so that the introduction of illegal aliens into this country can actually modify the census numbers so that they can have more seats. I mean, do you understand the absurdity behind what this man is saying? His whole political infrastructure is based on making the United States of America less secure. He continues to make money off the death of the future. And you're going to condemn Bibi for wanting to legitimately protect his country? This is hypocrisy in its finest, folks. It is.
He has put himself in coalition with far-right extremists like Ministers Smotrich and Ben-Gvir.
Okay, let's just assume that he's right about that, which he's not. He's also put himself in coalition with Arabs. He's put himself in coalition with people that don't necessarily agree with his political ideals. And even the people that don't join him in his coalition agree with the way that he's handling the war right now. What else do you have to say now, Chuck? This is my problem. This is the problem that I have with what he's doing.
And as a result, he has been too willing to tolerate the civilian toll in Gaza, which is pushing support for Israel worldwide to historic lows. Israel cannot survive if it becomes a pariah. Prime Minister Netanyahu has also weakened Israel's political and moral fabric through his attempts to co-opt the judiciary. And he has shown zero interest.
Which, by the way, his attempts to co-opt the judiciary has absolutely nothing to do with what is actually currently going on at state. And what he calls Netanyahu's attempt to co-opt the judiciary is not how Schumer is characterizing it. What he's trying to do is bring balance back into the existence of the governmental infrastructure of Israel, because Israel doesn't have a constitution like we have a constitution. So to give unmitigated power to the judiciary in Israel to overrule the will of the people as reflected by the parliamentary infrastructure that creates a law is akin to saying the Supreme Court of the United States should no longer be one branch of government. It should be the ruling branch of government. Not a single one of these yahoos, not a single one of them would agree to that. No American would agree to that. So what Netanyahu is doing is actually very legitimate, and it brings a very important argument and discussion to the picture. It's critically important that we bring this up. I promise you that men like Schumer, I promise you, do not understand the full extent of what's going on with the discussion of the judiciary in Israel.
In doing the courageous and visionary work required to pave the way for peace, even before this present conflict. As a lifelong supporter of Israel, it has become clear to me the Netanyahu coalition no longer fits the needs of Israel after October 7th.
So let me just explain myself. The Netanyahu coalition no longer fits the needs after October the 7th, even though the Netanyahu coalition represents 80% of the will of the people. 80%, folks. And I'm being conservative with that number. So understand what totalitarian rulers like Schumer are doing right now, okay? Guys like him do this in the United States of America. Forget what the majority of Americans feel. We're going to do what we know is better, which is in essence bring you into further bondage because of our insatiable appetite for sin. That's what Chuck Schumer's doing. He's doing it in America, and he wants Netanyahu to do it in Israel. Understand that, folks.
The world has changed radically since then, and the Israeli people are being stifled right now by a governing vision that is stuck in the past.
Even by his foolish standards, he's completely wrong. If you're gay and you live in Israel right now, or you're any part of the LGBTQ plus, whatever it might be, in Israel, you can walk down the streets of downtown Tel Aviv and be fully secure. You walk in downtown Gaza or anywhere in the core of any of the West Bank cities, you're dead. So Chuck Schumer's crazy. He's lost his mind in this area. Nothing is accurate about what he's saying. Nothing. I want to do something because it's really important. I want to walk away from what Chuck Schumer is saying here. And I would like to bring you into the reaction that Netanyahu brought to what Schumer actually says. Because what Schumer said here is, I just think that what he says is absolutely crazy. And I think that it's always fair to allow Bibi to be able to respond to what's actually being said, okay? Because I think that what happens is if we allow this sort of one-sided dialogue to happen, all kinds of other mistakes are going to end up being made, and there's going to be some problems where I think a whole lot of misconstrued ideas are going to continue to be communicated without any real perspective as into what's actually going on, okay? And I think that it's really important for us to understand and know what's being said here, okay? Like, it's really, really critical. Okay, sorry, we had a little technical glitch there. Let's jump into Bibi Netanyahu's response to what Chuck Schumer said in this speech that we just went over. And this will be a good way to close. I'm just going to leave it uninterrupted. I think the response is important. I think what he says is very smart. Take a listen to what he says. And keep in mind all of the other information I've given you, and hopefully this will make some sense to you. So let's jump right into this, and let's take a listen to what Bibi has to say about the criticism here.
Let's talk about that criticism, Mr. Prime Minister. Here's Chuck Schumer slamming you on the Senate floor on Thursday.
A new election is the only way to allow for a healthy and open decision-making process about the future of Israel. People on all sides of this war are turning away from a two-state solution, including Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. I believe in his heart he has his highest priority is the security of Israel. However, I also believe Prime Minister Netanyahu has lost his way.
Mr. Prime Minister, he says you've got to go. Joe Biden says he liked the speech and also said your policies are hurting Israel more than helping Israel. Your response to Chuck Schumer and the president?
I think Schumer's statements are wholly inappropriate. I think we're not a banana republic. The people of Israel will choose when they'll have elections, who they elect, and it's not something that will be foisted upon us. But,
Amen.
You know, it's wrong to try to replace the elected leaders of a sister democracy and a staunch American ally at any time, but especially during the time of war. Just imagine that after 9/11, and when you're in the midst of fighting Al-Qaeda and winning, people will say, oh, well, the right thing, some Israelis would say, oh, the right thing to do is now to have new elections in America or have President Bush resign. It's inappropriate, shouldn't have been said, it's wrong. As far as my considerations, they're not for my personal survival, they are for the survival of the Jewish state, and that requires pursuing the war. It's something that my government enjoys the support of the overwhelming majority of Israelis. And let me tell you something, not only the majority of Israelis, but the majority of the American people. 82% support Israel consistently over the 5 months of the war against Hamas and not Hamas. So, I don't know why Senator Schumer made those statements. I think the only thing that we should be focused on is changing the regime in Gaza, bringing down the terrorist regime of Hamas and not the duly elected government of Israel. That's the right policy.
Well, as you know.
So there you have it. That's his response. And I think his response was very good. I think he could have said a lot more. I think he could have completely bashed Chuck Schumer, but he responded professionally. He's speaking like a wartime leader, and it makes a lot of sense. So, folks, you have it. You've got the Schumer video. You've got Netanyahu's response. You have the position of Hamas. And hopefully you'll be able to take this video and use it to be able to better formulate a series of arguments to the common arguments that are thrown out all over the world right now. This is really important. One quick last picture that I want to draw for you, and it's one that we've been talking about a lot. I've actually read it again and again and again to you guys, but it's worth reading one more time. And this is the book of Zechariah, because Zechariah prophesied that this would happen, right? We know that in the last days we were going to end up seeing all of this. This is what it says in Zechariah 12:1, and I'll read it all the way into verse 3. It says, "The burden of the word of the Lord for Israel, saith the Lord, which stretcheth forth the heavens and layeth the foundation of the earth and formeth the spirit of man within him. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all people round about when they shall be in the siege, both against Judah and Jerusalem. And in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all people of the earth be gathered together against it." We already know. We're in these days, folks. Keep your eyes open. Take everything with a grain of salt. Put it up against the word of God. Let the word of God be the determining variable for the decisions you make, the conclusions you come to. Pay attention to what's true and walk according to that. All right? God bless you guys. Love you.